today's discussion is on the role of education in human unity. So we will remain within the context of this united India and see how can the role of education through India as a starting point, we could say, could be explored to see how we can move towards a united, not only India, but a united humanity. We have with us today Shivakumar and Priti. Shivakumar has been working in Aurobindo Society since 2001 and has been engaged in bringing about a deeper change in the fields of youth and education. He is a director of the Aurobindo Foundation for Integral Education and Research, and he conducts workshops and camps on integral education for principals, educationists, teachers, parents, and students, and also coordinates several projects related to education and the society. He's also the National Director of Auro Youth, the youth wing of Aurobindo Society. And Priti is an artist, an integral educator, a parent, adopting integral education practices for more than 2 decades. At present, Priti resides in Pondicherry and works with Aurobindo Society as a teacher trainer and a research scholar. Her spiritual journey from a young age of 21 led her to the world of integral education at Mirambika in Delhi, a free progress school at the Aurobindo Ashram in Delhi. Living an inside-out life are her watchwords for life.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's very befitting that we are having this conversation on integral education in the light of Aurobindo's first dream, which talks about unity of India in Unity Pavilion. So that's a very good way to start with. And I'm not sure how many of you are engaged in school education, but this is an education that concerns all of us directly, whether we are part of a school system or outside of it. But sometimes when we are into education, we tend to look at it as if it is meant for children. And that is the general notion that we hold, where Mother has very clearly said that the first step, if we want to educate children, is to educate ourselves. So that way, the school is the school of life. All of us are students. But sometimes we will have to step back and look at integral education itself in its broadest and deepest perspective. Why do we call it as integral education? So when we look at life as it has evolved, you can notice 2 distinct ways in which life looks at itself. One, I would like to call it as a materialistic way of living life. So what it means is it puts matter at its center and it develops everything out of it. Even if there are higher things, it has to be a result of and it must have come from matter. And unless and until it can be relatable as if we can relate to matter, like we can see, we can hear, we can touch, then whatever you may say, it is a little suspect. So this is the materialistic approach which have been developing. But there were a few people who wanted to go a little deeper into matter and wanted to question, so is there an origin for matter itself? You know? These are the scientists. So they started digging into matter. So they discovered molecules. From the molecular level, they went into atomic level. And from there, they went into what is called subatomic level. So when the scientists reached that subatomic level, they were in for a surprise. It took their breath away because none of the known physical laws were applicable there. It's a totally different world, as if this normal world could not have come from that which is so contradictory. So I'm going to share with you 2 characteristics of that subatomic world. They've named it as quantum world, by the way. So one unique characteristics of a subatomic quantum world is that the objects of the quantum world can appear in two places at the same time. Now imagine Shivakumar sitting here, and at the same time another Shivakumar is sitting in another place. I do not know, he may be signing off some blank checks, I don't know. Just imagine the situation. If I can exist in two places at the same time, which is the real me? And that is mind-boggling. So in the quantum world, any object can exist in more than one places simultaneously. So the scientists couldn't explain how this can be. And another one was much more serious one, which challenged all the established scientific discoveries and theories. See, in our world, when a scientific law is discovered, it's very objective. So anybody in any part of the world can actually experience it. But in the quantum world, the person who discovers a law influences what he sees. So nothing in that world is objective. Now, this is so much contrary to that world. They were at a loss, and the scientists were literally hesitating to go further because already their foundation is getting shaken up quite nicely. And this is happening in one part, mainly in the West, I would say, and a little less in the East. But in the East, the second approach to life was simultaneously developing. They too wanted to know the origin of matter. But they said, we won't use instruments. We want to experience what is the origin of matter. The scientists needed instruments, but these people in the East wanted to experience it by themselves. And they discovered a technique of going deep within matter by the sheer power of concentration. And whatever they could discover, they were experiencing it directly. So what happened to them? Well, they too reached the quantum world. They dug deeper. They didn't stop because the discoveries didn't startle them. They said, this is what it is. I want to go further. So they dug deeper, and they found beyond the material world, there are subtle material worlds which are there. But they did not stop from there. They went so deep that at some point they had a breakthrough. What happened? They touched the origin of the entire creation. And when they had that experience, remember, they were not looking at this origin through an instrument. They experienced it, and it was quite breathtaking. They were left speechless because the experience of that origin of matter was so much in contradiction with everything that you see here. Things here are very limited, very confusing, a mixture of everything. There is a doubleness to everything. If there is a day, there is a night. If there is a light, there is a darkness. There is a happiness, there is a sadness. But there, it was quite contradictory. They were unable to even put it into words which are part of our human languages because that was a superhuman experience. So the people who came back, they were unable to communicate what did they experience really. And they struggled, they tried, but they finally said, well, it's too beautiful. Only thing that we can say is every one of us should experience it. It cannot be described. But still, there were always some daredevils. So they tried to express the inexpressible. They wanted to communicate the incommunicable. And what they said, they tried it. But the sentences that came out was so contradictory, so much in, the second sentence was opposite of the first one. And it even resulted in a kind of a unique language. So I'm going to give you one sample of how they described their experience. So one thing they discovered, you can't name that which is at the origin in anything that we know. So they simply decided not to name it, but say that. In Sanskrit, what do we say for that? Tat. So they said if somebody asked them what is behind everything, they can't say a name. They simply said that. And it so happened that when two people who have experienced it, when they met each other, they could identify each other with that inner glow which they carried by experiencing that. So they will simply say, oh, you experienced that? And he will say, yes, that? And that was it. No words were necessary for them to be aligned because they knew that they have experienced. But one did try to experience, and it sounded something like this. So I'm going to say it in English first before I tell you the Sanskrit word for it. So they said, what I have experienced is complete. You know, the Sanskrit word for complete is Purnam. What you see here has the possibility of becoming complete because it is backed by that. Not yet complete. Then this relationship is a one-way relationship. How is that? From that completeness, if you remove this would-be completeness, still that will remain complete. Nothing will happen to it. But not the other way. Now, this is how they were struggling to express it with the language. They said, Purnam Ada. Ada is a beautiful Tamil word too, because the Tamil still retains Adu, Idu, that, this. So Sanskrit also retains that word. Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachide. From that completeness, this completeness has come. That's why we call it as the origin. And then they say, Purnat. From that completeness, Purnat, Purnam Adaya, if you remove this completeness, Purnameva Avasishyade, that will be completely unaffected. So now what are we supposed to understand? It's going beyond the normal way of communicating with this. So these people, especially in the East, and especially in the East, in India, they were so fascinated that they started spending more and more time in the company of that it almost resulted in the neglect of the material world. Because that is so fascinating. Whatever is not available here, it's available. Permanent bliss, unending happiness, all that is there. So why should one come back here? It almost resulted in a neglect of matter. One look at the past history of India, the last 2,000 years, how many people have invaded in the country which discovered the origin, and that itself will give us a clue. Until came Sri Aurobindo, who said, now we want to change the equation. And what did they say? The life that we lead here can never be complete unless and until we include that. Whatever we may achieve, it will still be incomplete. Whatever feelings that you end up, you are happy, well, it's not going to last longer. And they are one of the first to categorically tell that what we call as the spirit is necessary to complete our life here, the so-called material life. And in fact, they said, without that, we don't have the possibility of making the life complete here. So I'm going to read one quotation from the mother, which says, we need to prepare ourselves to integrate that with this. Now you understand the origin of the word integrate. We are essentially trying to integrate two things which are incompatible with each other, spirit and matter. But Sri Aurobindo and the mother came and said that it is quite possible. We even need an education that prepares children to make this integration, this completeness possible. So that is how integral education was born, as an education which is meant to complete our life by making the spirit and matter come in the right proportion. So this is what they say. An integral education, this is the mother's words, an integral education which could, with some variations, be adapted to all the nations of the world. In fact, not just India, it can be applied anywhere on this earth with a little variation. And then she continues, an integral education which could, with some variation, be adapted to all the nations of the world, must bring back the legitimate authority of the spirit over a matter fully developed and utilized. So we are not going to bring the spirit and matter together in this way, that the spirit at the service of matter. No. But it is the other way, the matter, this life at the service of the spirit, because that has the capacity to make this life complete. Now, this is the birth of integral education and the meaning of the word integral. We are here to combine the spirit and matter in the right proportion. We'll take a quick look at some of, I would say 2-3 very unique and special feature about integral education. So Mother has said this is a universal education, applies to everybody born on earth. How does it achieve? Because whatever education you take up, it applies to only a specific group of people. Engineering applies to only people with an engineering mind. Doctors, different. Artists, different. How can an education be something which could apply to all of us? Well, one of the first special character of education, integral education, is that it follows closely the sequence of growth of the child. And this is universal in its nature. So when a child is born, I'm sure all of us can relate to it, what is the first concern of the child? To get its movement right. It starts flashing around its hands and legs. It wants to roll over. It wants to get up. It wants its muscles to coordinate with each other. It wants to figure out where it can get energy from, eating, and when and where to sleep. All the initial concern of the child or the nature in the child is driving towards having a starting point as the basic things of the body. So eating, sleeping, and moving the muscles, coordinating the muscles. As the child grows up further, you can see that the senses of the child are opening up. He is concerned more with looking at things, hearing things. Even if you give him a very sophisticated electronic toy, he is interested more in banging and then hearing it sound. Why? Because he wants to develop his senses. So seeing and smelling and hearing and tasting and touching. So the second part which opens up in the child are the sense development part. Montessori system recognizes this and gives so much importance to sense development in the initial stages. But you observe the child further, the child is a creature of little and bundles of emotions. He laughs, he cries, he wants to keep on laughing. And anybody who makes him laugh, he falls in love with it. The emotions of the child are the next thing that opens up. You look at a child as a flower that opens petal by petal. So the physical petal opens, and then the second petal of senses and emotions open. And when the child reaches round about 10, 12 years of age, you'll find that the questioning nature of the child gets prominence over anything else. He can immediately pull you out. Mama, you said this yesterday, but now you are contradicting it today. You said yesterday for me to do this thing, but today you are saying the opposite things. Why? Why the sky is blue? The way he is questioning everything shows that a third petal, the mind, is coming to prominence, and integral education follows this sequence by saying that the first focus is the physical education. The second focus, which focuses on senses and emotions, are the vital development. Mother calls that part as the vital part. And then the third one is the mental part. But these are not to be followed as chapter 1 over. Now let's begin chapter 2. Whatever gets started, it's unending. You can develop the body to its fullness, keeping on progressing. The vital development and the vital education which concerns with it, once you have started it, there's no end to it. And the same too with the mental education. But when the child grows further, a little bit of wonder and a deeper question comes into it. Why am I putting in so much trouble to develop this and this and this? For what end? Is there something that I need to achieve? Is there a purpose to my life? What am I meant to be? Now these are the deeper questions which inevitably will follow And the beauty of integral education is that it doesn't stop with the mental education, but in fact, it goes one step further. This is a unique feature of education. It says there is a fourth part in us besides the physical and vital and the mental. And the mother even names it, she calls it as the psychic part, which has the capacity to give answers to the deeper questions of life. Am I going to be a useful person? What is it that I am meant to? Because everybody and everything around me seems to be against whatever I want to do. Hardly I get any encouragement. Where should I turn to? Should I take role models from outside? Now this is where integral education comes and says that no, there is a part within you which has the capacity to answer. And this is what, once again, we'll go back to what Mother has said. She calls this part as a psychic part, and the consciousness associated with this, the psychic consciousness. And she says very beautifully, only the psychic consciousness has the knowledge and the insight needed to do the right thing in the right way. Isn't it our everyday search? Any problem comes, we want to do the right thing. Any challenge comes, we want to solve it in the right way. And the right way doesn't mean only right for me. The right that is spoken of here is right for me as well as everybody around me. It can't be a result of mental logic, because that is too one-pointed. This can come from only the psychic, which looks for the best in me as well as the best in everybody else and wants to achieve it. And that is a very, very special characteristic of integral education, the discovery of the fourth part in us. So that is one discovery. Once we have discovered this, what are we supposed to do? Well, all that went into the making of me, now we will have to organize it around this part, because this part knows what I am meant to be. Now I will have to pull my physical energies, my emotional energies, and my mental energies and align it with that which knows what I am meant to be and that which can guide me. And that becomes the next quest, I would say, to become an integrated personality, so that I stand before the world, say that this is my purpose and I am growing in order to fulfill that purpose. So the second unique aspect is this will demand a double shift from the conventional education. This integrating and harmonizing oneself around the psychic. The conventional education, I'm talking about the education outside, is syllabus-centered, isn't it? They have a syllabus, the teachers and the students have to follow that. Now, recently something called NEP, National Education Policy, has come, and they put child at the center. They've said physical has to be educated, emotions has to be educated, mind too has to be educated. Pretty much what integral education has been talking about, but not yet has it reached the fourth part, the psychic, in whose light all the three other parts need to be developed. If we miss that, somebody actually came and told me that, integral education, physical, vital, mental, psychic, this NEP has achieved 75% of it because physical, vital education and the mental has come. No, I say you touch integral education when you touch the psychic dimension, because it's only under its influence that all these three need to be developed. And then help the child to get in touch with it, without which the education can never be complete. So this is the second special characteristic, that integral education achieves the double shift from syllabus-centered to child-centered, which is what NEP is focusing on, to soul-centered. So we are right now in India in the middle stage of NEP-based child-centered, but we need to make the next shift where the education itself becomes the soul-centered. And that is what integral education introduces. So this is the second aspect. And third and final aspect, there are so many aspects, but I'm highlighting only the three. What happens when this happens? Like, let's say all of us are part of a school where integral education is practiced. So we all grow up remaining in touch with the psychic, all our bodily, physical energies and emotions and mind, the thought energies are aligned with the psychic, what is going to happen? I have a natural tendency to express the best that I am meant to express, and we all come together in harmony. Why in harmony? Because the psychic always wants to express itself by being in harmony with everybody else around me. And we have a possibility of, I would almost even poetically say, creating a new world here, right now. A group of people who are aligned with the psychic, who are focused on developing their physical and emotional, mental energies. When they come together, it creates a tremendous atmosphere which can become influential. It can change things in the world and the way it evolves, introducing the possibility of the birth of a new world. And this is what integral education is meant to achieve. In the chapter on psychic and spiritual education, the mother says quite poetically and beautifully, this is where we are all moving towards giving birth to a new world. So I'm going to read what mother has said about it. She says, from beyond the frontiers of form, a new force can be evoked. A power of consciousness which is as yet unexpressed, and which, by its emergence, will be able to change the course of things and give birth to a new world. And this is what integral education wants to achieve.
My question to both of you, seeing that you both work with educators in India around integral education. So how do you think we can go towards, in action, in everyday education, if one wants, with children and then later on with adults, but with the young population of this country, how can we bring about these changes to have an education which is more inward turning, which starts from within and then explores each of the different parts, rather than a kind of system which is imposed upon this growing individual? So in your work, what do you do? How do you approach this? And how do you think this could be developed further?
So we go back to what mother has said. In order to educate the child, the first step is to educate ourselves. And she continues that, what does it mean to educate ourselves? To become conscious and master of ourselves. This is the education that we have to go through in order to be able to be in the presence of a child where we can be of some help to the child. See, the way our education has happened, it has turned us all outwards. We are all seeking things from the outside. Now, we have got a little settled too. Now, for us to turn towards the psychic center and then come out, it's a U-turn that we have to make. It's going to be a little difficult. And therefore, we might think that, oh, how can I make it happen with a child if I have not made it happen within myself? That's a very, very valid question that we have. And this is something that we should recognize. But the beauty of integral education is that it says that when we were children, we were already under the influence of the psychic. We may not be directly in touch with it, we may not be conscious of it in a full-blooded way, but we are very much under the influence of the psychic. It is because of the way that we grew up by focusing more on the outside and forgetting to refer to that which is inside, that now as adults we find the difficulty to be with children and be a role model for them where we ourselves are in touch with it. So as far as children are concerned, they are already under the influence, but we have to sustain this growth so that they grow under its influence until they become capable of directly getting in touch with it. But what is the help that we can do? There's only one way, that we have to be in touch with our own psychic center. There is no other way. But then one can say that, well, that's going to take 10 years. Probably, what am I supposed to do until that? Now, this is where it happens. Because the child is already under the psychic influence, he can understand and feel the sincerity with which an adult aspires to be in touch with the psychic center. So if I sincerely aspire to be in touch with my psychic, even if I have not yet reached there, achieved it, the child is quite capable of sensing it, and he will respond to the sincerity of the aspiration even though you have not yet achieved it. And therefore, the very sincerity and the aspiration that we hold will create an atmosphere which is quite different from the outer atmosphere. See, outwardly one has to be organized. The classrooms have to be beautiful. The spaces has to be beautiful. Each thing has to be very organized in its own way. But by outer organization itself, integral education cannot happen unless and until we supplement it with an inner atmosphere which is made up of solely our own aspiration. And through that, we have to build this inner aspiration brick by brick as if you are building a building here. So much so that a child who is entering into it is like a sunflower which enters into the sunlight. Well, the sun doesn't have to give a lecture or do any big things. By the very fact that the sunlight is there, the sunflower is going to bloom. And that is why the integral education says that we must be aspirants, and then the magic will happen. So can we be like that sun which holds the aspiration so that the little sunflowers who are children can start blooming? So this is how we will have to build up. But a lot of more work needs to be done with ourselves so that we become worthy of being in the presence of an individual being who holds that purity of flame within himself. And when we are in the presence of the child, it's a very sacred moment. We don't yet realize it because the child has not yet developed his mind, mental way of looking at things, emotions, all that is yet to happen. He is very pure. And in order to be in the presence of a child, well, we have to even take care that our thoughts and our emotions, whether we express it or not express it, have to be pure. So when we step into the classroom, well, we will have to see that a little bit of calmness, quietude here and here. Connect with it. If we can't connect with it, hold on to that aspiration, step into the presence of the child, and then see what happens. Even a quite noisy group of class of children will automatically tend to quiet down, and they will get attracted to something which they cannot yet explain, but something within them knows and looks forward to that presence. So this is something which in a general way that we can say, the inner atmosphere of a school gets built by solely the people, the teachers who are part of that school. But in this atmosphere, and on top of it, we have the presence of the mother's consciousness too. So that is quite literally. So if we invoke that, that itself is a quite good starting point.
So a similar question was asked by the teachers of the ashram school here to the mother. They said, "Mother, you are here." Mother was physically present in her body, and still, like in the classroom, when the children are jumping or they're creating a noise, we get irritated, we lose our cool, and we are prepared with our lessons and everything, but yet it doesn't work. So what do we do? How do we manage? How do we do this science of living? It's very difficult. At that moment, everything goes for a toss. So mother again gives a very simple, so all of mother's advices are very simple, difficult to implement because one has to be extremely sincere to do that. But she says, create beauty. So what beauty? Not only beauty in the outer environment, create beauty in your, what he just said, beauty in your thoughts, beauty in your emotions, beauty in your very impulses, in your actions, so if you do that, she said, then the divine help will always be with you. You just be concentrated at how beautifully I can speak, how beautifully I can think, the most beautiful that I can feel. Let your emotion be that. And then the divine help will always be with you as your guide. So let that be your business. And as far what he said, has been my experience in schools in Mirambika and also outside schools where I have worked, which is not a free progress atmosphere, not an outside school. Children have been jumping on the benches and on the desks, and a very unruly, it's not even an integral education atmosphere. And yet, if one is conscious, extremely sincere, and one tries to make an attempt, somehow, as he said, the children get the message. They get the message. It may take a day, it may take 2 days, it may take a week, but somehow it comes along. It only depends on one's own sincerity. It boils down to that. And sincerity in this aspiration that can I be my best according to my highest ideal. What I want my children to be, am I also practicing that same thing? I want them to be the best. Am I also doing the same? So am I not just come here to deliver a lesson? Because here it goes beyond the lesson. So, and that's when it works. It works very beautifully then.
So I have one more question linked to widening the topic, because already this, as any educator or any parent would know quite well, even if that aspiration is there, the constant reminder of that aspiration and bringing it more and more deeply into practice is already a whole work of itself. But now, as we're looking at a united India, as we're looking at the topic of a human unity, and like you rightly said, when we talk about unity, it's not possible unless we start at that center, unless everything is around that very center. Otherwise, any other unity is just external and falls apart very quickly. So how do we, let's say at a national level already, you spoke of the NEP, which has certain aspirations. It's tried, okay, in the body, to some extent in the vital, to some extent in the mind. The central being has been a little forgotten. And you're right, it's not just a quarter that's missing, it's the very center. And it's been a center traditionally in India from the very start. So it's something we could really bring back into our policies and try to see how we can try to actually live that, because putting it on a piece of paper is a start. But then what? So how could we create or offer in our education systems? Now I'm talking about the education systems which trains teachers to be teachers. You work with principals, you work with educators. Can we look at what could be included? Because it seems to me when one goes into your bachelor's to be a teacher, etc., these are not necessarily the tools that are offered. This sense of utmost sincerity, the sense of self-giving, of constant aspiration. And if we look at an integral education, that is the very basis. That ought to come first, before any other training. This could be the very key. Mother speaks of the psychic as the shortcut, the safeguard. So what could we imagine, what could be proposed? Because India seems to wish to go in this direction. But sometimes one is a bit at a loss as to where to begin, where to start. Do you have any idea how this could be done at a wide scale, at least in terms of aspiration?
Just as we have a soul which knows what it wants to be, our nation, India, also has a soul which is quite clear about what it wants to express. So somebody asked the mother that, how do I get in touch with the soul of India so that I know and then I can contribute because I'm part of a greater entity? And the mother's answer was, get in touch with your own soul. It will put you in touch with the soul of India. Now that's a very, very beautiful statement, because if we outwardly try to identify with the nation, imagine you are talking about a nation where every 50 kilometers, everything changes. And whatever you eat, what you eat in Tamil Nadu, it's totally different from what you eat in Andhra Pradesh. They add more spices to it. And when you go to Gujarat, they add more sweetness into it. Go to Punjab, it will be parathas. Every 50 kilometers, the whole way of eating changes. The whole way of dressing also changes. So from here, if you go to Gujarat, they will put the pallu of the sari on the other side, whereas in South India, we put it this way. They speak different languages. So outwardly, it will be extremely difficult to reach the unity of India And it is not by trying to embrace outwardly these things that morning I will have a North Indian meal, and afternoon, well, I will have a South Indian, and then evening, I will have a Central India. It's not going to lead us to unity. But on the contrary, people are going to ask for one thing and we will end up in conflict. But it is through the soul that we get in touch with the soul of India. And even if we want to go beyond and identify with the entire humanity, we can't open up outwardly by letting go of everything that we hold, which gives us an identity. But it is through the soul that we open up to a greater identity. And then we feel that we are very much part of India. Our destiny is linked with the destiny of India. And these are to be discovered in the soul and not in an outer way. So this is what something we must realize and probably drive our education to the importance of it being a soul-centered education. And well, we will graduate to a soul-centered life. And that will lead us to get connected with India and its destiny too.
Also in 1910, when Sri Aurobindo wrote the 3 principles, when he wrote these articles on education, he gave us these 3 principles in that if we even start with the near to the far, just simply not taking from the far to the near, I think it will be a great start, because then you start from something that's really the troubles, the problems. You don't even know the trees growing outside your own house, and you want to study the trees in the city. So when each and everyone starts looking, their vision actually will become a little more introverted, a little more inner. And that's where they will start with the 2nd principle and consulting their inner nature. And I think that is a good start also to at least integrate these 3 principles. If they start looking at NEP is recognizing Sri Aurobindo, and if they start recognizing these 3 principles and understanding the depth of them, but that is it. They have to understand that.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question?
First of all, thank you both of you for giving this like a conscious lecture on education, in which like today it is most important, because if the education will change, the whole seeing of the world will change. So my first question is from sir, that how can we integrate that and this? You said that is the spiritual and this is the matter. So even these 2 words are opposite to each other. So how can we integrate it? So could you please let me know?
So we cannot integrate it unless and until we discover something which is equally part of that and equally part of this. So the pure spirit is too far away, and real pure matter is right here. Do we have something which is equally part of both? And that is the discovery of the psychic. I told you about the soul. So the soul is in its essence one with the spirit. But it is very well grounded here in matter, so much so that it can help you and it can answer you to even the everyday problems, even the girlfriend-boyfriend problems, even the financial problems, economic, political, whatever you say. The soul is so very well grounded here that I recall the mother's quotation. It has the right consciousness and it knows the right answer and at any point of time. And we have been given that part. And interestingly, every one of us has this part within us. Nobody can say that, no, I'm not feeling anything spiritual, so I think maybe the psychic is not there in me. You don't have to worry about it, because it is there very much, probably a little thickly hidden, but it is very much there. This is the assurance that is given by Sri Aurobindo, the mother, that whether we believe it or not, whether we want it or not, we are already spiritual in one part of us. We can claim to be, I am a very materialistic person, but you are carrying the spirit within. So, and that is the beauty of integral education. The part that is equally material and spiritual and put both these in the right combination is already within there. The moment we touch base with the psychic, then we immediately become conscious of how that and this can be brought together. And in fact, that will be the next step. Once we get in touch with the psychic, it is going to put us in touch with everything that is waiting to come. New poetry, new art, new music, new types of creativity, all are waiting there without a bridge. The psychic is the bridge between that and this.
I have one more question from you. Like, have you ever touched integral education? Like, have you ever touched integral education?
So, one thing is very clear. The moment we try to touch integral education, we are objectifying it. Whereas this is a very subjective experience. Mother said something very beautifully. I can't define the divine, but all of us can become the divine. So this is our aspiration, that we want to touch base with integral education, as you call it, or the psychic center. This is the aspiration with which we start. And it is not a black and white question. Are you in touch with it? Yes. Are you in touch with it? No. There are gradations of being in touch with the psychic. Something like the sunlight. Right now, we are experiencing sunlight, but it's bouncing off. You step outside, you're directly under the sun, but you are not at the sun. So you catch hold of the rays and climb all the way, and then you can merge into the sun and become the sun. Well, that is the highest state. But right now, we can very well be open to the sunlight. So there are gradations in which we approach and try to be in touch with the psychic.
And ma'am, I want to also ask from you, like, what do you mean by like united teacher?
Sorry?
What do you mean by united teacher? Teachers.
The one who's united, who has united, so we have all these parts of the being. So sometimes the mind is thinking something else, the emotion is going somewhere else, and the body is somewhere else, right? The body has a lot of pain. You enter into a classroom, you have a headache. The mind is thinking, oh, I did not finish that work and I have to organize that. The emotion is that, you're getting affected by that body. So what is happening at that time? What is happening? Is there a unity between these three parts? No. They're all fighting, na? They're all saying that, mere ko bhi dhyan do, look after me. Someone is saying, do this first. Someone is saying, do this, that. So, but where do we have to be united? Around the psychic center. So how do we find that light? That why are we so disorganized? Why is there pain in the body? How am I looking after my body? So you have to start asking these questions and start looking after these parts of the being. But how do we look and awaken these parts of the being is in the light of this.
While you were talking on it, so even though I am in standard 12 and I am going to give exam in like February, so I thought like in today's world the teacher's mind should have to be like washed, because it is already like filled with the material world. So how can we like find something new without like free from this material world? So I got little stuck on this. That's why I asked from you.
So today's topic being united, the theme of this invocation being United India and education, role of education in it. When we speak of United India, the image that comes to my mind is the mother and her, Indian map behind her in sports ground. And that's very different from the Indian map that we are taught right now. No? So when we speak about education for United India, how does this idea, I mean, you are rightfully being a realist, we know that it has not even gone to the national level, but yet how do we aspire for these ideas to trickle down to Bangladesh, Maldives, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nepal? Are we doing anything, in your view, in terms of nationally taking our education? And also, what do you think is the role of small enclaves like Auroville and Ashram? We may not objectifying it in any way, but are we very self-centered that we do our little thing and we hope if somebody comes and learns, it's their good luck, otherwise the goodies are for us?
So I'll start with the last. What is the role which Auroville and Ashram and places associated with the mother can play? See, in the outside world, you are left with yourself. You have to make all the effort that is needed to discover that which can help you to get united with the soul of India, and through that, you have an identification with India. But here, there is a force and a power which is so strong and concretely present that we don't have to rely on our own efforts, but we can rely on that power which is consciously trying to make this happen. So I would say what we need to do here is only 1/100th of the effort that is needed in order to achieve 100 times more powerful results than what you would have done in the outside world. And that is the privilege that is given to us. So the more we make use of it, and the more it becomes evident. And the second one, we may talk of this approach as a theory, as an academic subject, and it is already being done. But the conviction will not come unless and until we have a model to point out, see, it is being practiced and it is in the process of being achieved here. So it's like they say, no, a picture speaks 1,000 words. So it is probably given to us to create models so that we don't only talk about integral education and the soul, but we can actually point out to them that here it is being attempted. Here we are in the process of achieving. We are already far ahead. That will convince the bigger unit to take up an education and then make it into a national policy and even perhaps international policy too. And it is only by turning their attention to that which is within that there is a possibility of India once again becoming undivided. So it's just a map now, but it is not just a map because there is the soul of India which is undivided. So if you look at my body, somebody can fragment my arm and then keep it aside. And they can only fragment my body, they can't fragment my soul. So the hand must join the body so that the soul can fully express itself through all of its body. In the same way, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and they all will have to unite under India's soul. But in order to help them to wake up to that very idea that India has a soul, well, outwardly, we can't make it, but inwardly, advocating an education which is universal in nature so that they wake up to this first and automatically they wake up to that too.
Yeah, I was trying to ask about the model actually. So you answered that in the last question. So it's all beautiful theories there, we have all these theories, but for me, like, I want to see a model. Is there a model already present or no? Yes or no? Where we can see after going 1 year of integral education, the school or the place can show that after 1 year of integral education, this was the development they have gone through, or we can quantify the results.
The model is already given in a very small book called On Education by Sriaurobindosociety and the Mother. When we say model, it has got two aspects to it. One, what Sriaurobindosociety and the Mother have given is in terms of the principles that applies universally. And in the quotation which I've read, with a little variation, we are ready to apply it. What is that variation is, the principles are the same. I have a body, you have a body. And even the people in America also have a body. They too have senses and emotions. They too have a mind. These are universal. Their fundamental nature is also the same. Combinations differ. That's it. Now, when we are talking about developing the body through physical education, what are the things that need to be developed is same for everybody, whether here in India or abroad. What are the things? We need flexibility, we need agility, we need strength, we need stamina, we need coordination. This is the same for everybody. You cannot change it. They are the principles. But the way to achieve will depend on the localization. Here, if you look at the ashram school, they have beautiful sports program. There is football, nice, beautiful football ground, hockey ground, then cricket ground. Now you want the same model to be applicable in Nainital, which is a mountain area. Where do you get a plain level ground? But you can achieve the same development through other activities where the principles, the things that needed to be are already given in that book. Why Sriaurobindosociety and the Mother did not give activities also is mainly because of this, because activities which will have to come out of the principles and the situation in which we find ourselves. So there in Nainital, there also you need flexibility, agility, coordination, strength and stamina. But for that, you have a separate game which are there, which you actually, if you happen to go to Nainital, they have a very beautiful game where they stand in a circle and there is a small rubber ball. And the game is they have to keep the rubber ball in the air by only using their legs. Now, they are the people who climb the mountains up and down. If you and I climb in 10 minutes, we'll be flat out of breath. But theirs is so strong, but even for them, it's a challenge because they need to develop the strength of the muscles here. And the game has developed itself because doing this, you will have to keep that small ball in the air. So they pass it on to the other and he kicks it to the other person. So, but the principles are the same. And when you say model, we have to be very clear that the book contains everything that we need to start with, but the activities will depend on us and our capacities too. So we cannot blindly enforce, because some activity has to be done. What if we don't have an expert who can do it? Well, the activity will fall flat, but not the principle. So we discover another activity which we can develop, and then we put it into practice. So model in terms of principles is already given. And a lot of activities are also given and developed, but you have to add a little more based on your locality.
Sorry, I was asking about the practical model. Yes, theoretical model is already there. We have given.
That is the practical.
Where we can see, actually, where I can go and see and understand the principles, how they have achieved, so that I can adapt to my local environment.
So there are a couple of places you can suggest.
Yeah, the place that I can suggest is, because NCRT also has done objectified them, is Mirambika, which is under the edges of the Delhi ashram. You can find out from them. They have a very, and also now, as you are saying, it is not like, it's not structured like that. Like every year, depending on the group of the children come, the program is made, as adapted. Right. So everything is done accordingly. Okay. So nothing is very written, but one has to experience it. So then if you go to the ashram school, there will be another experience. If you go to Auroville schools, there will be another experience. So you cannot say that integral education is like a copy of each other, but the principles are the same. And someone might be trying, and everywhere there is an aspiration to do it as much as possible, to one's best. But what everyone is doing, each one only knows how sincerely they are doing it, whether they are doing it 100% or not. You cannot make a judgment.
To see what's happening, it gives us an idea.
Yes.
I was just looking at that
yes,
point.
And
not to assess or judge anything. I have experienced it
through my own child who has been in Mirambika and is now in the ashram school. So I know how it works. And initially, a parent might stumble and feel that it may not work. You know, you may think, like in Mirambika, they don't start reading and writing till till 6 years old. So then that is a very shaking for adults who have grown up reading and writing from a very young age. So why are they not reading and writing? Why are they just singing songs or just climbing trees? That can be very, very, it can be earth-shaking for a lot of people. But if one has faith, then one sees, and even if one doesn't have faith, there is a faith in the system of what Mother and Sriaurobindo have said. And the child actually, every child can read and write eventually. And even if you don't give any examination till the 10th grade, still you can give an examination in the 10th grade. So all these are the conditioning. So that is what Mother wants. This integral education is the first step to unwind these conditionings. That is where the psychic education, how can you decondition yourself and wake up to something that is very new? Again, because you are asking for things that are, there, like that.
No. I understand the subjectivity of the point.
So one has to experience it.
Just to see the place, yeah.
Yeah, and even to see the place, you will be only making a judgment. You have to be in that place for at least 5 years to actually at least start understanding it. Because otherwise, it's always with the mind you are seeing. So how are you seeing it is also very important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I think we can wrap it up for today. Thank you very much, Priti, Shivakumar. Thank you for today's session.